What's up YouTube, Trashy here, and today we're tackling perfection in Stardew Valley. Finally. Now you get the spoiler warning up front on this one because we are going to be talking about some very late game stuff today. We're going to talk about what perfection is, tips and tricks for each different perfection requirement, and what the point of perfection even is in the first place. My goal for this video is to be the most complete, comprehensive guide to perfection in Stardew Valley that you will ever need. And if you already know everything there is to know about perfection, maybe this video will make some nice background noise for you to work or to sleep to. Either way, please enjoy the information that I'm about to dump into your ear holes, or eye holes. So, what is perfection? Perfection is one of the many goals that you can work towards in Stardew Valley, and while you don't necessarily become aware of it until you've gained access to the perfection tracker in Key's special Walnut room on Ginger Island, your progress towards perfection starts the second you begin your game. Achieving perfection involves completing 11 different requirements, each of which count towards a certain percentage of perfection, which can be found on the perfection tracker that we just mentioned, and I wonder how many times I'm going to say the word perfection throughout this video. The requirements are as follows. Produce and forage shipped, which refers to shipping at least one of every item that can be found in the Item Shipped tab in the Collections menu. Obelisks on farm, which refers to the 4 teleportation obelisks that you can eventually build on your farm. Golden clock on farm, which refers to, well, building a golden clock on your farm. Monster Slayer hero, which refers to completing all of the Monster Slayer eradication goals at the Adventurers Guild. Great Friends, which refers to achieving maximum hearts with every single NPC. Farmer level, which refers to achieving level 10 in every single skill. Found all Stardrops, which refers to, of course, finding and consuming all 7 Stardrops in the game, each of which are their own personal challenge. Cooking recipes made, which refers to cooking all 81 recipes in the game. Crafting recipes made, which refers to crafting all 149 craftable objects in the game. Fish caught, which obviously refers to catching every single fish in the game, also found in the fish tab in your collections menu, totaling 72 fish. And last, but definitely not least, golden walnuts found, which of course refers to finding all 130 golden walnuts on Ginger Island. Now, if this sounds like a lot of work, well, that's because it is. On average, it can take players between 100 and 200 hours to achieve perfection. Some people take it slow and it takes them even longer, and that's okay. Remember, there is no wrong way to play Stardew Valley. I didn't even attempt to achieve perfection until my 4th or 5th playthrough, and it took me around 150 hours in one save to do. Most of the requirements that we just talked about can be achieved organically as you play without having to focus on perfection specifically, but maybe you do want to focus on perfection, and that's also okay. Achieving perfection can either be done slow and steady at your own pace, or you can meticulously plan ahead and optimize to achieve it as soon as possible. Either way, hopefully you will find some helpful tips in this video. Now, in no particular order, let's have a look at everything that you need to do to achieve perfection and how to go about doing it. The first item on the perfection tracker list is produce and forage shipped, which is a little bit misleading because you actually have to ship much more than just produce and forageables. If you go to your collections tab in the main menu and check the first side tab, which is items shipped, you will be able to see exactly how long this list of items is. It is made up of every single forageable in the game, which is everything from your usual seasonal foraged items to the cactus and coconuts you can find out in Calico Desert, and of course every type of produce, which includes all crops, animal produce, and artisan goods. You also have every single type of ore and corresponding bar, as well as some items that at first seem kind of random, like wood, stone, fiber, bone fragments, monster loot, and batteries, but I quickly realized that any material that is used to craft an item is also part of this shipping list. And squid ink, which is not used to craft anything and seems to be the odd one out that I can't really categorize here. To summarize, you have to ship one of every foraged item, one of every crop including flowers, one of every animal product including small and large variations, one of every artisan product, and one of every item that's used in a crafting recipe. And squid ink. This particular perfection requirement is generally something that gets completed naturally as you play, although the first time I completed perfection, you would be surprised at the silly items I was missing from this list when I checked it. I'd never bothered to ship wood or stone, and I hadn't shipped many of the ores and bars either, so it is good practice to ship at least one of every crafting material at some stage. There are a few tricky ones here, such as caviar, which is specifically sturgeon roe aged in a preserves jar, not to be confused with aged roe, also on this list, which is just any other type of roe aged in a preserves jar. Keeping and hatching your first dinosaur egg is always a good shout, because you will need another egg for the museum down the road, and also one for making dino mayonnaise for this list. Strangely enough, while dinosaur mayonnaise is on the list, dinosaur eggs aren't actually a requirement for the shipping list. You will probably have noticed by now that radioactive ore and radioactive bars are a part of this list, both of which require you to take on at least one key quest in the late game. This is because radioactive ore can only be found in the dangerous versions of the mines or the Skull Cavern, both of which are unlocked via the key quests Danger in the Deep and Skull Cavern Invasion respectively. Once you've completed the relevant quest, you can then reactivate the dangerous version of the mines or the Skull Cavern at any time using their respective shrines. Also, if you're out grinding for radioactive ore, going on a good luck day with some luck buffs is probably best, as the spawn rate is highly affected by luck. The next requirement I want to talk about is Monster Slayer Hero, which involves completing every single monster eradication goal at the Adventurers Guild. There's not really much more to this other than slaying a bunch of different monsters, but let's go through some tips and tricks for each monster and where to find them. First of all, a general tip for all of your monster eradication needs: use Monster Musk, a recipe that you learn after completing a specific special order for the wizard. Monster Musk doubles the amount of enemies that can spawn on any given floor of the mines or the Skull Cavern, making it ideal for hunting down monsters. Also, if you're wondering how many of each monster you've eradicated, you can always go and check the board at the Adventurers Guild. Now, going through the list, first up, you will have to eradicate 1,000 slimes of any color. Unfortunately, you can't just raise a bunch of slimes in the slime hutch and then get rid of them, because those slimes won't count towards the goal. You will need to go find some organic free-range slimes in the mines or the Skull Cavern. To speed the process up a bit, you can take advantage of the fact that infested floors in the mines stay infested all day. This means that if you leave the mines and then go back, the infested floor will be in the exact same spot, but the enemies will have respawned. Finding an infested floor right after an elevator floor, specifically any of the elevator floors ending in 0, is super useful. Of course, you can find more enemies than just slimes on these floors, which is also useful for the other monster eradication goals, but they mostly tend to spawn slimes and can make this particular goal go by much faster. You'll also need to get rid of 150 void spirits, which are these guys, and also these guys. They both spawn after floor 80 in the mines, and all that there is to do is to grind these floors. Remember that leaving the mines and re-entering causes everything to reset aside from floor layouts, so you can easily clear floors 80 to 90 for example, and then rinse and repeat. Also, void spirits don't take very much knockback when you hit them, if any at all, so make sure that you bring some healing with you because they will do some damage for sure. You'll need to slay 200 bats of any kind, and you can find the easiest bats on floors 31 to 39 of the mines. This is one of those monster eradication goals that just boils down to slaying every single bat that you see, and eventually this goal will complete itself. You have to get rid of only 50 skeletons, which isn't a lot at all, but you can only find them on floors 71 to 79 of the mines. Be wary of their ranged attack and you will smash this goal in no time. Slaying 80 cave insects is relatively easy, and it's usually the first monster eradication goal that I complete on every playthrough. This is because cave insects range from these bugs that only fly in straight lines to these little grubs on the ground, including these super annoying cave flies. Grubs and bugs can spawn up to floor 39 in the mines, with grubs being more plentiful from floors 15 to 39. I haven't tried it, but I'd wager that you could probably knock this goal out in just one day if you grind the mines enough. 30 Dougies is another relatively easy goal, although I tend to just kind of forget about these guys, and this usually ends up being the very last monster eradication goal that I complete. You'll usually find them in the early floors of the mines up to floor 29, hanging around in bits of tillable soil that you can find on various floors. I find that floors 5 to 15 have much more space for Dougies to spawn, so a little bit of grinding and you'll have this one in the bag. They can be a little bit annoying, so just keep moving around the soil and swipe at them when they pop up to avoid damage. Now, slaying 500 dust sprites can sound a little tedious, but these adorable little Ghibli references spawn in groups from floors 41 to 79. A few days of grinding these levels and you will have this goal sorted in no time. Plus, this particular monster eradication goal gives you one of the best rings in the entire game as a reward, the Burglar Ring, which essentially makes monsters drop extra loot. You have to get rid of 60 rock crabs for this next goal, which can take a while. There is a way to spot these guys, because the rocks actually look slightly different. If you look closely, rock crabs have what seem to be two little eyes, kind of, in the form of brown pixels on the bottom right, compared to normal rocks, which usually have two black pixels there. They're also usually placed kind of off-kilter, as the rest of the rocks are on a grid. However, I am really bad at distinguishing these little guys, so I usually just bring a whole lot of bombs with me and grind the first 30 floors of the mines, and get it done. You can find lava crabs too, which also count from floor 81 onwards, but grinding the earlier floors is just easier. The next goal is to slay 100 mummies, which is a pretty annoying one. First of all, you will have to go to the Skull Cavern to find mummies, and second of all, you'll need bombs or explosive ammo to finish them off after downing them. They are easy enough to find in the Skull Cavern, and if you really want, you can just spam the first floor over and over again to find more mummies. Pepper Rexes are my favorite monster, but they might be the most annoying and the hardest monster eradication goal to complete. You only need to slay 50 of them, but they can only be found on prehistoric floors, which can appear very rarely in the Skull Cavern and even more rarely in the mines. After level 7 in the Skull Cavern, prehistoric floors have a static 2.2% chance to appear every time you go down a floor, and even then they might only have a handful of Pepper Rexes in them. My strategy for this is to just spam staircases. If you get yourself a small crystallarium farm going in the early game and duplicate jades, you can trade them in for staircases at the desert on Sundays, which I'm sure that most of you know, and you can then use those staircases to blast your way down the Skull Cavern, and you're guaranteed to run into at least one prehistoric floor somewhere. These adorable guys spit fire, but they stay still while they do, so just try to step out of their way and then hit them from the back while they're busy trying to burn you to ashes. And now for everyone's least favorite bundle of despair, serpents. You need to get rid of 250 of these insufferable danger noodles. Unfortunately, there's not really a secret to slaying these guys. You can only find them in the Skull Cavern, similar to mummies, although they do also spawn on high-leveled farms that have monsters activated on them. And if you want to, you can just spam the first floor of the Skull Cavern repeatedly to take these guys on. Also, bringing a powerful weapon with you is useful. I mean, it's useful for any of these, but serpents take a lot of knockback, which means it can take a while to get rid of them unless you're doing a lot of damage. And last, but definitely not least, we have magma sprites. These annoying flying fireballs only spawn in the volcano on Ginger Island, and you have to get rid of a whopping 150 of them. Unfortunately, you cannot use the leaving and re-entering method here to get more to spawn, as the volcano dungeon, unlike Skull Cavern and the mines, resets daily, so once you've cleared one floor, it will stay cleared. On top of that, when you hit a magma sprite, it takes a lot of knockback, and many times you just kinda gotta stand around until it comes back to you. Sometimes they don't even come back until you get closer to them. You just need patience, perseverance, and to visit the volcano dungeon a bunch of times to complete this one. Moving on from monsters, another requirement for perfection is reaching maximum hearts with every NPC in the game. Now, I don't know about y'all, but this part is often the hardest part of perfection for me because I actually don't really care that much about the social aspect of Stardew Valley. I know, it's one of the main parts of the game, but like, I'm just not that invested in most of the villagers, and that's okay. With that being said, here are some of my top tips for making friends with all of the different NPCs in Stardew Valley. First of all, it is important to know that there is a hidden friendship point system. Each one of these hearts constitutes 250 friendship points, and the different things you can do to gain friendship will give you varying amounts of points. For example, talking to an NPC for the first time that day gives 20 friendship points, and completing item delivery quests from the board outside of Pierre's shop gives a whopping 150 friendship points, making them worth your while. Gifting somebody a loved gift gives 80 friendship points, liked gifts give 45 points, neutral gifts give 20 points, and of course disliked and hated gifts reduce friendship points. Plus, liked and loved gifts get a boost if they are of higher quality, with iridium quality gifts getting a 50% increase to their points. And on top of that, if you read the Friendship 101 book, which is always the 9th gift from the prize machine in Lewis's house, you will get a permanent 10% boost to all friendship gains. In fact, when it comes to gifting, you can multiply these points by 8 if the gift is given on their birthday, and by 5 if the gift is a Feast of the Winter Star gift. Technically, if you gift somebody an iridium quality loved gift on their birthday, you would gain 1056 friendship points, which is a total of 4 hearts in just one day. The only item that differs from all of this is Stardrop Tea, which was introduced in Stardew Valley 1.6 and gives 1 whole heart when gifted on any random day. And it also doesn't count towards the usual 2 gifts per week limit. Plus, on birthdays and during the Feast of the Winter Star, Stardrop Tea always gives a whopping 4 hearts. Now, not talking to a villager for a day does kind of cause friendship to dip. However, it only goes down by 2 points for each day that you don't talk to them, unless you're dating, in which case it's 10 points, and 20 points for your spouse. Which is pretty realistic. If I didn't talk to my partner all day, I'd feel like he'd probably be upset too. If you have the movie theater unlocked, inviting someone to see a movie that they like gives 100 friendship points, and inviting them to a loved movie gives 200 friendship points. Plus, getting them a snack gives 25 more points if they like it, and 50 if they love it. This gives the movie theater the capacity to increase your friendship with any NPC by 1 whole heart in just one day. The luau is also another great opportunity for a nice friendship boost, because if you get the best possible outcome, you will instantly gain 120 friendship points with every villager. This can be easily done by adding a gold quality melon or gold quality cheese to the potluck. Now, when it comes to easy gifts to quickly boost friendships, coffee is universally liked by almost everybody, and so is fruit obtained from fruit trees. I also like to start working towards having a deluxe coop full of rabbits, because rabbits' feet are universally loved by everybody except for Penny, but that's okay because Penny loves diamonds, emeralds, and books, all of which are pretty easy to get your hands on. However, at the end of the day, the Stardew Valley Wiki is your best friend when it comes to learning who likes what gifts. Also, remember that the game actually keeps track of the gifts that you've gifted and their preference. If you go to your friendship tab and click on any individual NPC, you will get a list of gifts that you have given and how they were received, which is incredibly useful. And you can also buy a calendar from Robin to make checking birthdays much easier. The next item on our perfection checklist is farmer level, which can be a little bit confusing because it says 25 on the perfection tracker and then all of the skills actually amount to 50 total levels. This is because your farmer level is your total skill level divided by 2, meaning that level 10 in all skills would be 50 divided by 2, which is 25. Maths. Now that means that for this one, you will need to achieve the maximum level in all 5 skills. I actually already have a super detailed video in which I do a deep dive into each and every skill in Stardew and how to best level them up, which I will leave in the description below. If you're after specific advice for each skill broken down into easy to digest sections and thorough information down to how much foraging experience you can get from chopping up a log, go check out that video, it's worth the watch. In the meantime, let's see what else you need to achieve perfection. Next up on our list is finding all 7 Stardrops in the game. Stardrops increase your maximum energy by a decent chunk, and some of them are incredibly annoying to find, so let's go through all 7. The first Stardrop that most players find organically is the one that is located in a chest on floor 100 of the mines. This one is pretty straightforward and you'll find it as you play. The next most common one is the Stardrop sold during the Stardew Valley Fair on Fall 16th for 2,000 star tokens. You can win star tokens by participating in different activities such as the Grange display or by buying them from one of the stalls of the fair. However, the easiest way to obtain these tokens is by playing the spinning wheel. As much as some players like to claim that this is a myth, this wheel is 2.75 times more likely to land on green than it is on orange. It is made to be that way deliberately, this is not a bug. And in fact, if you eat food with a luck buff before going into the fair, you can increase the odds of winning even more. If you play it right and bet around half of your star tokens on green every single time, eventually you will make 2,000 star tokens. You can also get a nice chunk of starting star tokens by simply participating in the Grange display. The next star drop is obtained by either marrying an NPC or moving in with Krobus and getting them to over 12 hearts. Once you have reached the correct amount of friendship points, they will present you with a star drop. And in multiplayer saves, if you marry another player, you'll get a star drop in a gift box the next time that you enter your home after the wedding. Also, speaking of Krobus, he sells the 4th star drop for 20,000 gold in his shop in the sewers, which you unlock access to after donating 60 items to the museum. Speaking of the museum, you will get another Stardrop once you have completed the museum and donated all 95 items. My biggest advice for this hefty challenge is to always keep your hoe on you and hoe up every single artifact spot that you see. In the late game, if you're only missing a few artifacts, it is worth checking the wiki to see where they can be found. For example, if it's something that can only be found in a certain area, if you have foraging mastery, you can make yourself a treasure totem, use it in that area, and hopefully find what you need. The 6th Stardrop is actually obtained after going to the woods and giving a weird old man a sweet treat. And by that, I mean that there is a statue in the woods called Old Master Cannoli, who is apparently looking for the sweetest taste, which is, of course, the sweet gemberry. Just keep an eye out for a rare seed being sold at the traveling cart, and make sure to plant it either at the very start of fall outdoors or in a greenhouse, because it only grows in fall and takes 24 days to grow. If you plant it too late outdoors, it will unfortunately wither away when the season changes. The 7th and last Stardrop is obtained, unfortunately, from catching every single type of fish in the game. Fortunately, it is closely related to another requirement for perfection, which brings me to my next point. You need to catch every single type of fish in the game as a perfection requirement. Now, this might be the point where some people simply abandon their dreams of perfection altogether because they hate fishing, and I get it, but believe in yourself. You can do it. I trust in your ability to push through and catch all of these dumb fish. I feel like one of the hardest parts of this requirement is knowing where and when all of the fish can spawn, because obviously they differ by location, season, time of day, and weather. Luckily, there is a special order that you can complete for Pam where she asks you to brew 12 potato juices, which is just vodka by the way if you didn't know, and place them in her kitchen. Once complete, one of the rewards is access to a television channel called FIBS, or Fishing Information Broadcasting Service. This channel will give you detailed information about the current season's fish, including what fish you can catch and at what time, location, and type of weather you can catch them in. If you struggle with fishing, I recommend cooking up some fishing buffs, as they will make your fishing bar bigger and your rod longer. Additionally, you can use certain bobbers to your advantage, such as trap bobbers for the more challenging fish, which makes the fishing progress bar decrease much slower. One of the worst things about fishing is having to wait for specific seasons to come around before you can catch certain fish. This can really put a delay on achieving perfection, but you can actually work around this restriction. You can get yourself some magic bait from Key's store, which you need to unlock for perfection anyway, and use it to catch any fish from any season, time, and weather in whichever location you're fishing. This works wonderfully for legendary fish and even night market fish, which you can catch by using magic bait in this area here where the night market submarine docks during the event. Moving on, you will also need to cook every cooking recipe in the game to achieve perfection, for a total of 81 recipes. Now, you can find all of these recipes technically in the cooking section of your collections tab, although recipes that you don't know will be blacked out with question marks when you hover over them, whereas recipes that you do know but haven't made yet will be grayed out with the ingredients visible. Now, aside from needing a buttload of ingredients, you will also actually need to learn all of the recipes in the first place. Many recipes will be taught to you by different NPCs as you befriend them, either through the mail or through a cutscene, which is good because you will be wanting to achieve maximum hearts with everyone for perfection anyway. However, many other recipes are taught to you by the Queen of Sauce, a TV program that airs a new episode every Sunday for your first 2 years in the Valley, with reruns every Wednesday. Fun fact, the reruns will only ever teach you a recipe that's already been aired that you don't know. Now, after you've found a total of 100 golden walnuts, which we'll talk about here in a bit, you can also buy the Queen of the Sauce cookbook from the bookseller for 50,000 gold to learn any recipes you missed. However, if you've already passed year 2 and all recipes have aired, it is good practice to check the Queen of Sauce rerun on Wednesday before reading the book. If you know the recipe on the rerun, that means that you already know every single Queen of Sauce recipe, so you don't need to spend 50,000 gold on the book. There are also a handful of other recipes to be learned that you can find in shops such as the Stardrops Saloon, the Island Trader on Ginger Island, the Resort on Ginger Island, and the Dwarf Shop in the Volcano on Ginger Island. When it comes to cooking the recipes, you will need a lot of ingredients. My advice here is to keep at least one of everything in your fridge or mini fridges, although in most cases you will need more. This is, again, one of the cases where it can be very useful to check the wiki. In fact, the cooking section of the Stardew Valley wiki has a complete list of all of the ingredients you're going to need to cook every single recipe. So if you want to start hoarding stuff away right from the start of your game, this is an amazing resource. Similar to cooking, you will also have to craft every single craftable item in the game to achieve perfection. First off, you are going to want to turn on advanced crafting information in your settings. This allows you to see how many of each item you've crafted, making it much easier to track which ones you have left to craft for the achievement. Unfortunately, unlike cooking recipes, you won't know what recipes you're missing. There is no tab for craftables in your collection screen, meaning that you're just going to have to make sure that you buy every recipe everywhere you go. You can check if you've crafted something, but not if you're missing the recipe. Secondly, you're going to need to keep in mind that there are so many different sources of new crafting recipes to learn. Of course, you will learn new recipes every time you level up any given skill, which is where you'll be learning most of your crafting recipes, but there are a few more obscure sources. You can outright buy a lot of these recipes from many shops around the valley, so let's have a look at them now. Pierre sells recipes for grass starters in the dehydrator. Robin sells many recipes for different types of flooring and braziers. Willie sells the recipe for the fish smoker. Krobus sells recipes for crystal floors and the wicked statue. The dwarf sells recipes for weathered floors and a big stone chest. The dwarf in the volcano sells the recipe for island warp totems, and the desert trader sells the recipe for desert warp totems. The island trader on Ginger Island sells the recipe for deluxe retaining soil. And finally, for shops, Mr. Key's shop in his secret walnut room sells the recipes for deluxe fertilizer, hyper speed grow, bluegrass starter, magic bait, the heavy tapper, and the hopper. However, the wild list of recipe locations does not stop there. You get the recipe for ancient seeds after donating one ancient seed artifact to the museum, the recipe for casks when you update your farmhouse to contain a cellar, the recipe for fairy dust after completing the pirate's wife quest, and the recipe for the ostrich incubator after completing the island field office. You can also get a selection of recipes from festivals. During the Spirits Eve festival, you can buy the jack-o'-lantern recipe from Pierre, and during the flower dance, you can buy the recipe for tub of flowers from Pierre. Also closely related to festivals, make sure that you acquire one of each of the 8 rare crows, 4 of which you can buy at festivals. The Stardew Valley Fair, Spirits Eve, the Festival of Ice, and the Flower Dance festivals all sell a unique rare crow. You can find the other 4 in different locations, bought from the Dwarf in the Mines, as a reward for donating 20 items to the museum, as a reward for donating 40 items to the museum, and purchased from the casino out in Calico Desert. The reason this is important is because you will be sent the recipe for the deluxe scarecrow after collecting all 8 rare crows, another recipe that you will need to craft. And of course, all of this aside, you learn more recipes for each mastery that you achieve and redeem, and you'll learn a bunch of recipes from taking special orders at the special order board in town. It's good practice to complete each one of these special orders at least once. However, not all of them teach you crafting recipes that you need for perfection. You don't actually need to do the following quests: Emily's Rock Rejuvenation, Evelyn's Gifts for George, Gus's Famous Omelette, Lewis's Crop Order, Pam's The Strong Stuff, Pierre's Prime Produce, Robin's Project, and Willie's Tropical Fish. So, now you have all your recipes. Now what? Well, my biggest recommendation is to dedicate some time during your run to plant many trees, chop them down, and repeat every now and then. In fact, taking some time during your run to periodically go grind for wood, hardwood, fiber, stone, and other crafting materials is always a good idea, because you're going to need a lot of them, especially wood. You can actually buy some of these resources, such as stone and wood from Robin, and ores and coal from Clint. Although, I would recommend buying resources during your first year only if you want to stockpile them, as Robin and Clint's resource prices increase substantially starting in year 2. When it comes to actually crafting all of the things, I like to keep a workbench in my house with a bunch of chests around it. The way this works is by allowing you to craft items at the workbench while pulling from every chest on the squares directly adjacent to the workbench, meaning that technically you could pull from up to 8 chests. Just plop all of your materials into your chests and craft away. One last tip for crafting: if you're playing a multiplayer save, you do not need to craft the wedding ring for perfection. Another requirement for perfection is finding all 130 golden walnuts strewn around Ginger Island. This is also necessary for multiple other things we've talked about today so far. For example, you need to have 100 golden walnuts to access Key's special walnut room, which is where you check the perfection tracker, and also where you can buy a bunch of recipes that you need. You'll also need to unlock the island resort to purchase a cooking recipe from Gus when he mans the bar. The island trader sells a few other recipes that you'll need, and of course you will have to complete the island field office for the ostrich incubator recipe. Basically, completing Ginger Island is 100% necessary if you plan on achieving perfection. However, I do have some good news. I actually already made a complete guide to finding all 130 golden walnuts, including details on which areas to unlock first to maximize your time there, which you can find on the screen right now or in the description below. That's right, I am in fact not going to go through all 130 golden walnuts again in this video. You will have to watch the other one for that. And if you don't want to miss useful tips and tricks, you should probably also subscribe if you're not. Now let's talk about the most expensive purchases that you will ever make in Stardew Valley. In order to achieve perfection, you have to fork over a total of 13 million gold to the wizard. Having all 4 obelisks on your farm and building a golden clock on your farm are 2 entirely different requirements according to the perfection tracker, but I am including them in the same section here because both of them are purchased from the wizard and they both also require an insane amount of money. First off, to access the wizard's shop, you have to complete a series of quests that start when you first visit the railroad area after completing the community center or Jojo Mart. The first quest is called Dark Talisman and basically involves speaking to Krobus to gain access to an area and retrieve something, which grants you access to another area that starts another quest where you have to give a goblin some void mayonnaise. You know, normal Stardew Valley stuff. Anyway, once you gain access to the wizard's shop, you will see that everything there is pretty damn expensive. All 4 of the obelisks cost a total of 3 million gold to build. It's 500,000 gold each for the earth and water obelisks, and 1 million gold each for the desert and island obelisks. They might be expensive, but they are actually pretty useful, allowing you to teleport to their related locations for free. Then, on top of that, the golden clock costs a whopping 10 million gold, but it does stop weeds from spreading on both your normal farm and your Ginger Island farm. So how are you supposed to make this amount of gold? One of the biggest and most popular ways of making insane amounts of gold in Stardew is by having an ancient fruit or a star fruit winery going. The first time I achieved perfection, I had a greenhouse full of ancient fruit as well as ancient fruit all over my Ginger Island farm, and then 3 sheds, which I know was a lot, full of kegs to process that ancient fruit into wine. With the artisan profession, wine sells for 40% more gold, so you can net some insane profits with this method, but it most certainly requires some previous setup. I like to get some tappers set up on a small oak tree farm as soon as I possibly can during my playthroughs, as the most costly to get resource for crafting kegs is oak resin. Once you have a decent amount of oak resin stashed away, it is pretty easy to grind for copper, iron and wood, and then fill out a couple of sheds with kegs. Now you can just periodically buy starfruit seeds from Sandy's shop out in the desert and turn those into wine, or you can be like me and lose your mind over ancient fruit. I like to try and find an ancient fruit seed pretty early on in the game. They can be found as drops from cave bugs and larvae in the early levels of the mines, and as soon as I unlock the greenhouse, I will plant that bad boy. It'll take 28 days to grow, but after those 28 days, it will produce 1 fruit every 7 days. I usually spend a decent amount of time taking these fruit and putting them into seed makers to eventually grow a greenhouse full of ancient fruit, and then eventually I plant even more on Ginger Island. This fruit then gets fed into the shed full of kegs that I've been preparing, and this is my main moneymaker, with 1 shed full of ancient fruit wine producing over 300,000 gold in a week with the artisan profession. However, this method is kinda boring. I mean, it's fun to build up, but at some stage it just becomes a kind of boring slog to check your crops, keg them, and then sell your wine. You can do some other incredibly lucrative things in the meantime if this is a bit too boring for you. For example, grinding the Skull Cavern for iridium and making iridium bars is a much more entertaining way to make a whole lot of money. I actually have a beginner's Skull Cavern guide where I go into extreme detail about a full Skull Cavern run that I did without staircases, where I found enough iridium in just 1 run to make over 100,000 gold selling bars. I also have another video about how to make literal millions of gold from farming legendary fish roe, which just might be my new preferred method of making passive gold, although maybe to a less extreme extent than what I did for that video, which I will leave in the description below for y'all to check out. Regardless of how you decide to do it, you are going to need a lot of gold for these 2 requirements, so you might as well achieve it in whatever way suits you best. If none of these methods interest you, there's so many other ways to go. You can always farm fairy rose honey on your Ginger Island farm, which sells for a bunch with the artisan profession, or build a gazillion barns and become a truffle oil magnate. It's up to you. So, those are all of the requirements you need to achieve perfection. Now let's go over a few general tips that didn't really fit into any other category. If you're playing on PC and have the ability to add mods to your game, there are a few mods that can help you on your journey without being too intrusive or changing the game. If you can't add mods to your game, feel free to skip ahead to the next part of the video using the timestamps below. The to-do list is one of my favorite mods ever. It allows you to set up very specific to-do lists, as the name suggests, so you never forget what you have to do. The list appears in the upper left corner of your screen, and you can filter your chores to appear on specific days, during specific weeks or seasons, with specific weather, and you can even categorize your chores for easy organization. You can also just turn the list off if you don't like it cluttering up your screen and check it using a keybind instead. Another useful mod is called Stardew Progress, and this allows you to check your progress towards perfection at any time, and it also gives you a very detailed breakdown on exactly what it is that you have to do. For example, it tells you how many loved gifts you need to give to any given villager to reach max hearts, and it indicates in green which villagers have birthday that season, and in red when it's someone's birthday that day. It will even tell you what ingredients you need to cook the recipes you haven't cooked yet. Any food stored in your fridge or mini fridge in the main farmhouse will be discounted from this list, making it even easier to know what you're missing. There's a similar system for crafting items, and the fishing tab shows you what fish can be caught during your current season. This mod saved my life when I was working towards perfection, and I think it would have taken me much longer to complete without the Stardew Progress mod. And my last useful mod for perfection is the Look Up Anything mod, which gives you all of the information that you could ever need about anything ever in this game. I know that might sound like an exaggeration, but it is true. With this mod, pressing F1 over basically anything in the game will tell you all of the relevant information. For example, using it on a villager will tell you if you've gifted them anything that week, how many points until your next heart, and the gifts that they enjoy. It even highlights gifts that you have on you in green and gifts that you have stored in a chest at home in black. If you use it on monsters, you can see exactly how many of them you've eradicated, which is the only way to check this aside from going to the Adventurers Guild. When used on an item, it will tell you if it's needed for the community center and the specific bundle it's needed for, if it's needed for the shipping achievement, which correlates with shipping every item of produce, as well as the gourmet chef achievement, which correlates with cooking every dish. It will even tell you which villagers like or love that specific item. It does all of this and so much more, making it a pretty useful mod for any occasion, not just achieving perfection. Also, quick sidebar, if you would like a tutorial on the many different ways that you can mod your game on PC, let me know in the comments. Also, definitely let me know if you already mod your game and would like to see a showcase of some more of my favorite mods. Moving on from mods, here are some more general tips and tricks for working towards perfection. If you are playing a multiplayer save, the perfection score counts for everybody in the game. If one player catches every single fish, for example, the other players don't need to then also complete that requirement. Now, these scores are shared, but they are not split. That means that if one player catches half of the fish and the other player catches the other half, it will not complete the requirement. Another example is one player completing half of the monster eradication goals and another player completing the other half. Requirements will only be complete once one singular player has completed them. This is true for all requirements aside from the golden walnuts and for shipping every product unforageable. The shipping bin technically belongs to the entire farm, therefore no matter who ships what, it will still count towards final perfection score. Remember that the traveling cart exists and can be your best friend. While it won't sell you any recipes, it could sell you a very peculiar ingredient that you need for a cooking recipe, or even a rare item you need to ship. Technically, you could achieve perfection without ever owning a chicken if you can find a small and large egg for sale at the traveling cart, both of which are needed for the shipping requirement. Speaking of shops, check them all. Seriously, make sure you look through every single shop and purchase every single recipe that you see. You can't track crafting recipes, and trust me, it sucks to have to run around and try and figure out what you're missing that last recipe from. The quicker you get your greenhouse up and running, the quicker you can start farming some of the best crops in the game. Make yourself some seed makers as soon as possible, and you can fill your greenhouse with profitable crops without spending any extra money, helping you towards your 13 million gold goal for the Obelisks and the golden clock. I've said this before and I will say it again, the Stardew Valley wiki is your best friend. Seriously, use it if you feel like you need it, there is no shame there. Stardew is a massive game and perfection is a wild achievement, so use the wiki if you're struggling. We've all done it and I still regularly use it to double check information for my videos. Also, shout out to everyone that helps update and maintain the wiki, by the way, you guys are the true MVPs. So you know how during this entire video I've been saying that you have to do all of these things to achieve perfection? Well, you kind of don't. You can just buy it. After you've seen the perfection tracker for the first time, you will get a letter from Fizz, a Joja employee. If you meet up with him in this cave on Ginger Island, he will offer to sell you perfection wavers for 500,000 gold each. Each waiver increases your perfection score by 1%, and buying all 100% would cost you 50 million gold. Although you would probably have a few percent of perfection achieved at least by the time that you unlock access to Fizz, so realistically buying perfection in its entirety probably costs a little bit less. Now you will get no judgment from me if you decide to buy perfection waivers. I do believe that first time players would benefit more from achieving perfection without buying it, but also, it's a game. I'm not your mom, so do whatever's fun for you, you know? In some cases, buying a perfection waiver here or there can also get you out of rough situations like having to wait a full year for a fish to come back into season or a crop to ship. It can also help fix certain bugs like the last golden walnut not counting and being locked out of perfection, which I believe is an old bug, but I do think that it can still happen in 1.6. Also, just for the record, buying the 14% of perfection that the Obelisks and Golden Clock give you is actually cheaper. 14% of perfection slips cost 7 million gold, whereas the Obelisks and the clock cost 13 million gold, almost double the price, although at least the Obelisks and the clock actually have a use. Now, after all of this, you're probably wondering, is that all? What about the movie theater bundle? What about all of the key quests? What about having kids? And the answer is yeah, that's all. There are many things that are essential to achieving perfection, but there are also many others that you can completely avoid. You don't need to do the community center, you can do Joja Mart instead. You don't even need to get married because you can just room with Krobus. You don't need to complete every side quest, you don't need to beat Journey of the Prairie King or Junimo Kart, you don't need to read every book, and many of the things that you don't need to do. But what do you get for achieving perfection? Aside from access to the summit, a special cutscene, and actual endgame credits, you get a statue of true perfection from the perfection tracker, which produces one prismatic shard every single day. You can buy golden eggs, which produce golden chickens, and also experience a special golden witch event, and you can find a special familiar looking hat from the monkeys at the volcano. And of course, if you're playing on PC, you get the perfection Steam achievement, which currently only 2% of players have. And bragging rights, as well as a sense of satisfaction, and then maybe a little sadness because you technically just finished one of the best games ever made. But that's the beauty of Stardew Valley. It has infinite replayability. In fact, you can keep playing after you get perfection and do whatever you like. Collect every single item of clothing, build more sheds and decorate them with different themes, marry and divorce every romanceable NPC and collect all of their portraits to decorate your house with, a la 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, except it's the 12 Spouses of the Farmer. You know, just normal stuff. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know in the comments who your least favorite Stardew Valley NPC is and why. I am planning on doing an NPC ranking of sorts at some stage, and I want to know your thoughts. I stream stuff on Twitch, I post random thoughts on Blue Sky, I update the community, also known as you guys, on Discord, and you can find links for all of these things in the description below. I also have channel memberships up and running if you would like to support me and the videos that I make even more than you already do by just being here. Members get access to these adorable ancient fruit badges, these frog emotes that I made myself, and a bunch of other perks depending on membership tier. Speaking of, thank you so much to Alexis Jordan for being the official first member of the Trash Master tier. I'm still not sold on that name, but it's what we're working with for now. Thank you so much for your support. I appreciate it so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see y'all in the next one. Love you, bye!